A new study finds that parents are existentially demoralized by the betrayal of the public schools, and they are expecting a very bad year for their school kids. Gosh, it's such a shame, Katie, that we don't have any educational options in this country beside public schools to help ease their pain. Oh, wait, we do. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college classrooms all around the world. Today's show is sponsored by Mike Lindell. There he is. He's one of our friends at MyPillow. MyPillow is always offering great deals, and this week they want you sleeping on the best sheets around. That's right. Their famous Giza cotton sheets are available. Buy one, get one, basically, 50% off. All you have to do is use the access code DRDUKE if you were educated in the public schools. That's Dr. Duke, DRDUKE. Visit mypillow.com and save up to 66%. I know that's more than half by a big gander on all other items as well at their store. All you got to do. Okay, today we start with a new survey that finds parents across the country are literally existentially depressed. I mean, at the core of their being, they are exhausted by the betrayal of the public schools, how the teachers that they have known and dealt with for years, depending upon how many children they have now committed to ignoring your kids' education and instead using that in that mandated classroom time to turn them into little anti-Christian, anti-American, illiterate, math-phobic kids who have no other future outside of Antifa. And this is where we stand right now.
So if we take a look at the Brookings Institution, as they put it back in March, almost everyone is concerned about K-12 students' academic progress. Yes. And the scholars found from surveys that almost 3/4, 71%, of U.S. adults are concerned about K-12 students' current academic progress. At the time, they opined very few economic, political, or social concerns share this level of agreement in the populations. And now, as we see that we're back into it here in the fall, parents are just as concerned and dreary and done with it and over it. And hey, saddle up, parents. That's what they're telling you.
But the problem is they're exhausted to the level of quitting.
This is true.
What they would like is they don't even want to think about school anymore. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to know. And of course, that's exactly what the public schools want. I mean, the public schools have, for 50, 80, 100 years, 150 years, they have slowly convinced American parents that they can't educate their kids themselves, that no, we shouldn't have to spend money on education. That's one of those things that, the vacations and cell phone bills and 65-inch TVs and huge cable bills with all the channel, those are necessities. But the idea that we would be asked to spend money on our child's education, it still has not gotten across the synapses of our brains. It keeps getting stuck somewhere between them as the gaps in our synapses grow bigger and bigger to signify how much more clueless we are. This is where we find ourselves. And so this existential despair of parents is benefiting the public schools, who are taking more and more liberties with their kids' social, emotional development. That's all this is all about. It's going to get worse. There's no real way to stop it, except removing your kids from the problem. And I got to say this, Mom and Dad. On the one hand, you have exhaustive despair. On the other hand, you have the opportunity to remove those kids. At some point, it's like the cancer patient, right, who's got the one drug who's going to get rid of that tumor sitting right by her nightstand, right there. And for a bunch of stupid reasons, she doesn't take the medicine. You have the medicine that close to you, Mom. Just take over your kid's education. Just find a way to get him somebody else than public school teachers to educate your kids. That's it. And yet, for the life of us, a huge majority of parents aren't even interested in getting better.
Now, I'm sure there's someone out there who's going to comment, well, yeah, that's why you should just get the COVID vaccine. Or not get the COVID vaccine. We're at a crux in this country with a whole lot of things of some people say you should do this and some people should say you should do this. But I think the long time coming of the education system, if you haven't experienced it yourself, just know that it is really bad. Really bad. And you probably did experience it, and you've probably tried to block it all out, the memories of it. But if you do have children and you want them to get an education, get them out of the public schools. That's the long and short of it. Now,
and you make a point. COVID makes it worse, but this existential despair is, I think, first and foremost for their kids coming home without an education. And then when you add onto it all the mandatory masking and all that, 2-year-olds having to trump around in masks, it's just, this is where that despair comes from. And in a way, there's a certain justification for this despair because there's really no way to reach inside the system and fix it. There's nothing you can do but leave the system, and that's going to have to be something we talk about.
And what we're already seeing, and we saw it all of last year, but now it's just at this point, how it's gone on and on and on. The fact that what's happening in various classrooms from day one is little Johnny may have been exposed to COVID, and now the entire classroom has to go home. So it's another day of kids not getting an education. Mom and dad have to take off work. The kids all now have to go get tested. Do they have the COVID? Oh, wait, we just found another report of a different person who had gotten in contact with someone who had COVID. So whatever test results you have now are null and void, and you have to go retest it again. We're getting a lot of stories like that, and if you have a story like that this has happened in where you're from, please feel free, comment below, let us know. But we're getting more and more stories making it so whether or not they have the COVID or don't have COVID, the fact is, the overarching point of this is your kids are not getting an education then because of this. Yeah, so you might as well just keep them home to get the education or get them somewhere where the school will remain open.
Now, this is a college fix version of a story that can be read in the Wall Street Journal. If you want more information, I would simply point this out. A survey released last week by the app known as Lingo Kids found that 59% of moms and dads, almost 60% in this country, of children of the ages of between 2 and 8, they are experiencing parental burnout, which the news release defined as, quote, a form of physical and emotional exhaustion so intense that parents who were once operating at a high-functioning level found themselves struggling to show interest when their children want to show or talk to them about something school-related. I mean, that's a pretty staggering thing, that they're so burned out, I think, by the fact that they don't know, there's no real course of action for them other than to remove their kids, that they don't want to talk about it. When the kids come home with bad lessons and the kids come home frustrated by at age 6 being told they may not be the same gender that their body tells them, when they come home to gripe about endless lectures about LGBTQ activism and global warming, moms don't even want to hear it anymore. And that is bad for everyone. In fact, Lingo Kids found that more than half of parents reported that they have less interest in directly managing their kids' learning this year, only 52%.
Before we move on, just a reminder that if you enjoy our content, please consider joining the Patriot Club. Your tax-deductible donation literally keeps this show going. All you have to do to sign up is simply visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. And as a special thank you, we will ship you our brand new American Patriot tumbler that has that man, George Washington. We may be woke here in the U.S., but we are obviously a joke. And if you look at all of China, they are laughing at us because our students are being indoctrinated with equity, and Chinese kids are just too busy learning math and anything that actually has to do with education. They're learning the actual math, not that woke math, that racist math that we have over here. So we have 3 academic math scholars who actually had the balls to say, with grave warning, of the deplorable state of our K-12 math education in the U.S. And it's not just 3 white dudes like you may be thinking. It's 3 other people. It's Percy Deft of New York University, Svetlana
Jitomyrskaya.
There we go. Who's from Georgia Institute of Technology and University of California, Irvine, and Sergio Klannerman, maybe, of Princeton University. They're all academic math scholars. They arrived in the United States. Wait a minute. So they're immigrants. They came when they were young, and they just wrote at Quillette in August of their concern with our nation that is the United States still, right? I do believe we still are the United States
Yep.
for the moment. Their concern, and that they are proud to call this nation their home, but they talked about how we are losing the dominant position in mathematical sciences. Now, here's the warning that they wrote. The drawbacks of American education policies are so pronounced that U.S. schools are now losing their ability to attract elite scholars, despite the fact that the United States offers these academics a freer and more democratic environment. They offer math to be taught so anyone can learn it, and yet here we are calling it racist.
So as you point out, they are officially immigrants, which tells you something, right? It tells you something about the nature of math studies in America, where American-born mathematicians now are so engrossed with ethno-mathematics and cultural math, talking about how race, that teaching math is a form of white supremacy and white privilege. That's what we're doing. The Chinese kids, on the other hand, they're going through a very, very rigorous course of math and science, so much so, as the title of the article demonstrates, that the Chinese are dominating STEM education across the globe. And that's going to be that more than bombs and aircraft carriers. This is what's going to change the balance of power. We are no longer, you think about how many Asian kids over the last, particularly Chinese kids, over the last 15 years have influxed into our schools to try to learn the best that we have. China's now recreating the best in their classrooms, and I promise you, they're not concerned. Chinese kids are not being told about how math is persecuting Uyghurs in Chinese concentration camps. They're not wasting their time in math learning about the plight of the Uyghur. No, our American kids are learning that kind of garbage. They're just really nailing it, the Chinese, on STEM. And that's going to come back to bite you in ways that are much more serious than some of these other culture clashes.
Now, as the mathematicians said in their article, they do cite some reasons. The first reason as to why math is so bad here in the U.S. is that the state of math in K-12 public schools has resulted in few American children who are prepared for STEM careers. This leaves us increasingly dependent on a constant inflow of foreign talent, especially from mainland China, Taiwan, South Korea, and India. And they wrote that straight into the article. They noted a 2015 survey that was conducted by the Council of Graduate Schools and the Graduate Record Examinations Board, and it found that about 55% of all participating graduate students in math, computer science, and engineering in American schools were non-U.S. citizens. So basically all of our STEM, more than half, 55%, are not from the United States. We have immigrants who are doing it, foreigners who are coming over here, learning, and probably going back.
And what this tells us is that the white man's math, right? What your idiot math teachers are being told here, that white people are the problem. White people and math go hand in hand. Mathematics with its emphasis on right answers and precision. This is white supremacy.
Now stay tuned, because in the next segment we're going to give you more statistics, and we're going to speak a lot more about China specifically. All right, we're going to keep talking about this because it's actually a lot more impactful to life in America than you may think. Because if we're getting all of the immigrants coming over here to learn all of the math and then going back to Asia, specifically China, how that plays into the world that we live in, into who's dominant, which culture is dominant, who's got the economic power, who's got all of the power, it comes down to whether or not we know math. And we don't. So the National Foundation for American Policy estimated already back in 2017 that 81% of full-time graduate students in electrical engineering at American schools were international. So I just gave you about 55% overall for like the STEM careers, but specifically electrical engineering, 81% of full-time graduate students. So not even the low level, like, oh, I'm going to be an engineer maybe. No, this is the people who've already got degrees and coming over here. Now, 79% of full-time computer science graduate students were also international. So, are you on a computer right now? What are you watching us on? What device is in your hand or on your screen? Where are you getting that from? Computer science graduate students are also pretty much all international. Now, as the scholars wrote, they said, in our field, mathematics, we find that at most top departments in the United States, at least 2/3 of the faculty are also foreign-born. Similar patterns may be observed in other STEM disciplines. There it is.
And you would think that all this talk about white supremacy and math would be blown way out of, and done away with forever when you see brown and black skinned people or Chinese people come to this country, Asian people come to this country and try to get a better math, that they're teaching our kids math. You would think that that would demonstrate that math is not prejudice against anybody. In fact, for a long time, the most eager people across the globe, regardless of race, came to America to learn math. Now they come here to teach it because we do not focus on this enough with our kids.
And that leads into reason number 2 that the scholars wrote about. They said the national focus on social justice and diversity in K-12 schools. As they wrote, however well-intentioned, has had the unfortunate effect of weakening the connection between merit and scholastic admission. And they say that, if you have such a priority, it's served, sometimes indirectly, to discriminate against certain groups, mainly Asian Americans. And they noted California and how California, and we've talked about this many times, how they're trying to get rid of the racist math and how they're losing all of advanced students in math so that anyone who is in America and wanting to actually learn the math can't. Because we cannot do it. You can't be more advanced because we must be equitable.
And spare me this nonsense about good intentions. And despite the good intentions, what are those good intentions? You're taking something as tried and true and as important as math. You're labeling white supremacist, labeling it white supremacist because whites do better than blacks in this country. That's the only reason. What's the good behind this, the good intention by destroying our math skills for something stupid as that? There is no good intentions. There are wicked intentions which are being implemented to destroy math in the Western world. That's not good intention.
And on top of it, they say that there has been no input actually coming from universities down to the K-12, so that the universities can say, hey, we have students coming up. This is what the skills that they need to actually do. There's no input.
No, the universities have gone full inclusion as well. Send us your ignorant math kids, and as long as they're black and Hispanic, we'll take them. We'll take them, and we'll teach them remedial math. Maybe by the time they graduate college, they can function in a low-level change-giving environment, but that's the price you pay for inclusion.
And on top of that, they discuss the math teacher certification process, which any teacher certification process, but math specifically, they say costly and time-consuming prerequisite justified as necessary for effective performance. And they say, but to our knowledge, this claim isn't supported by the experience of other advanced countries. Moreover, in those U.S. schools where certification isn't required, such as in many of the charter and private schools, math majors and PhDs are in great demand, and the quality of math instruction they provide is, wait for it, often superior. So what you're telling me is, if we would actually teach the students in college math, then they can go into schools and teach math. But if we send the kids to math teacher certification, they cannot teach math in schools.
And how much, I'm going to say it, how much would all of this stop if we just got African, and if you want to pay them money to do it, do it. If we got African American culture to make math a priority among its kids. How? Because this is the problem. The Asian moms can do it. The white moms used to know how to do it. Why are we changing the very nature of math itself? Because some cultures just aren't that into it for their kids. It's time to stop destroying Western culture in the name of these racial groups. It is time to the degree that you can, empower them. If you want to dump more money into the system, I suppose, do it. But until the mothers and fathers of these children are taught to take these subjects seriously, nothing's going to change. We're going to keep going down the ladder, and you're doing their kids no favor by accepting them into college when they cannot, will not, or insist that they are not going to do the work in the name of politics.
And we know the parents in China are taking serious the math learning, because in China, they don't, as the authors say, the scholars say, they pursue none of the equity programs that are sweeping the United States. And it's quite contrary. It is building on the kind of accelerated, explicitly merit-based programs centered on gifted students that are being repudiated by American educators. Having learned its lesson from the Cultural Revolution, when science and merit-based education were all but obliterated in favor of ideological indoctrination, China is pursuing a far-sighted, long-term strategy to create a world-leading core of elite STEM experts. The mathematicians then said it is in some strategically important fields, such as quantum computing, the country is arguably already ahead of the United States.
Yeah, and the other thing is, because they're Chinese and not white, we can't criticize them for doing what you say we do, but we don't, right? This shows you how completely a mental disorder liberalism is. And what Katie said there, when they were all woke in the classroom, the Chinese under Mao, they destroyed math and science. And which path are we taking? The let's destroy math and science plan. Unbelievable. Back again today to talk about Johannes Vermeer, and this is one we did do a while ago also on the Dr. Duke Show, but it's such a pretty painting. Take a look at this. This is perhaps his most famous painting. It's a girl with a pearl earring. Give us the close-up there, and you can see what a wonderful picture. I mean, there's something so real about that face, how soft that cheek looks, how delicate those eyes. I mean, there's something really, really animated through the use of color and light in this picture that is, in its own way, it's captivated as many people as Michelangelo's Mona Lisa has in terms of what these faces and these young women are thinking. And so when we look at this here a little bit more, we try to get our minds around it. And I mentioned each day I give you a little bit more on Vermeer. Interesting thing about Vermeer, in the almost as soon as he died, he was forgotten. And he was his paintings grew more and more forgotten, generally speaking, outside of his native Delft. And it wasn't until the middle of the 19th century, a couple hundred years later, that people rediscovered Vermeer. And with the greater study by the Victorians, people from that particular era, he actually became one of the great painters of Western culture. So for a couple hundred years, he almost went underground. And I mentioned the light. The two dimensions here of any great painting are going to be light as the first one. And you can see that the light in the picture is really her face. There are some shadows. The beautiful top knot that rounds out the turban that she wears is a sort of a beautiful golden light. But really, the light here is right in her face. It's as if she's turning her head. Somebody's called to her. Somebody's entered the room. She pivots her head into the light, right? So the head comes into the light, and you have this the shadow on the left side there, back to her ear, which really helps to enhance the light bouncing off the beautiful pearl that hangs from her one ear. The way that the tucking of the turban and the hair underneath it causes it to bulge in certain places. The crisp white collar. This is really a staggering portrait. It's one of those portraits that is as good as the best portraits that Rembrandt usually churned out of people. And of all the paintings, and you think about this too, in this one, she's not in the room. As far as we know, she's not in that corner room. We saw the milkmaid. We saw the woman with the scales. We're going to look at other women painted in those two rooms, those same two rooms of his middle-class house. She had, by blotting out the background of this picture, by making it almost more Caravaggio-esque, right? By having the picture, the framed picture, she turns to you out of the darkness, right? That chiaroscuro technique sets her off in ways that many of Vermeer's women weren't, and it has a really surprising effect.
Okay, well, we want to take a moment to show some love to our Patriot Club members, and today we'd like to give a special shout out to Cynthia from Hart, Michigan. Cynthia, thank you so much for supporting us.
And that wraps up this show for Freedom Project. I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.